First thing to know about tuning the DX drone is that it, well, really isn't necessary. They come set up from the factory to do what they're supposed to do, and they really don't need to have anything done to them. There is a couple things you can do to them that might help out performance a little bit, but again, as I said, it's completely unnecessary as long as the drone is set up the way it came from the factory. What you can do to this basically is you can lower the dwell, which will increase the efficiency a little bit. Not so much that you would lower it and say, wow, it's twice as efficient, but it is a little bit of gas that you're not venting if the marker is able to cycle properly. You can also raise the dwell, which you're going to want to probably do in really cold weather. I've used this DX drive in about 22-degree Fahrenheit weather, and I actually raised the dwell to ensure that it was able to cycle properly. Before I begin here, let me kind of describe what the dwell is. The dwell is the amount of time in milliseconds that the solenoid stays open to allow gas through the drive system for the marker to cycle. And basically, once the bolt gets to the forward position, any excess time that the solenoid is open is going to allow gas to vent down through the grip frame and through the solenoid and out the grip frame. You may or may not feel it, but what that means is that if the dwell is open if the dwell holds the solenoid open for longer than it should, then it absolutely has to, it will vent some gas that you otherwise wouldn't have to. The advantage then becomes in lowering the dwell if as long as the bolt is able to fully cycle and function properly with your temperature, lubrication, and gun conditions, then lowering the dwell can actually increase your efficiency a little bit. It's probably better to do any of this until after the gun is pretty broke in. Some of these will break in faster than others. I would say about 10 cases and you should be good to go. And then you can start playing with it if you really want to. Once again, you don't have to. Let me go ahead and describe what that involves. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little general maintenance on the drive. Now is what you want to do is you want to take this thing out and shoot it. Get your velocity where you want to use it on the field. So if you like it 285, go ahead and chrono to 285, 290, wherever you're comfortable with, whatever your field allows or your tourney does. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to check the rig output pressure at this point. This has already been chronographed. I know where it's at. So just for demonstration purposes here, I'm going to show what the rig output pressure is. This is chronographing around 275. I shot it just the other day and haven't touched the regulator since. So I'm going to screw my reg checker on, close the valve on it. Fill this up, and I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's right at about 95. So right where these things like to be. Next is chronographing 275. This is a brand new drone. It's had almost no paint to it. So it's doing right what it should do. I'm going to pull this back apart. And put it back on the gun. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a little bit of tuning here. Okay, now that we got the pressure and the velocity where we want it, let's go ahead and demonstrate what the different dwells here are going to sound like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate here how to set the dwell. And to do that, we're going to enter the programming mode. So just take the marker. This one's been degassed. And I'll go ahead and point it here so you can see what I'm doing. But to enter the programming mode, you're going to pull the trigger and turn it on. It'll flash white and then turn to a solid blue. Solid blue is the first register. It's not something we'll normally need to play with, but it is one of the first modes in there. To find the dwell, it's going to be the red register, and that's going to be the next one. Pull the trigger one time. Okay, now we're looking at the dwell register. To program the dwell, you're going to pull and hold the trigger. The light here will flash the number of times that the dwell is currently set, and then it'll pause. When it pauses, all you do is go ahead and pull the trigger the number of times that you want the dwell to be when you are done. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate. Pull the trigger and hold. Okay, I counted 16 blinks. I'm going to go ahead and set it for well, let's try 6 here to begin with. So we'll pull the trigger and hold it. Wait for it to stop blinking, and then we're going to quickly pull the trigger 6 times. Wait for it to go solid again. That's all there is to it. You can turn it, get out of programming mode by pushing the power button, and you're good to go. Now what you want to do is take this to a chronograph and try it out. I'll demonstrate here what it's going to sound like. This is going to be probably the lowest you want to go with the dwell. Turn it on, turn the eyes off, pull the trigger. Okay, that sounds really smooth to me. It doesn't jump around a lot when you pull the trigger, so it sounds pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate what a dwell of 16 is going to look like, because I think you'll actually be able to see it kind of jump a little bit here in the in my hand. Turn it off. Enter programming mode. I just put 16 in there. Turn it back off. Turn it on. Turn the eyes off. Now watch carefully. I can actually feel it vibrating when you fire it. That's really too high. There's no reason to have the dwell at 16. What's happening is it's holding the bolt forward, venting excess gas down through the grip that you really don't need to have, and that's gas that's coming out of your bottle that's not putting the paintball out the end. I'm going to go ahead and reset it here for 6. So we've got our dwell set for 6. What you want to do now is you want to take it to the chronograph, shoot a bunch of balls across the chronograph with it. What you're going to look for is if you're having any what we call first shot drop off. That's where after the gun has been sitting for a few minutes you go to shoot it, and the first ball is say 240 and the rest of them are 280. Okay, that's called first shot drop off. If you have that, you can either raise the dwell a little bit, it might clear that up, or you probably want to go back in and relube this thing. You probably got something in there where it shouldn't be. If it is really consistent and measurable, in other words, the first shot after sitting for a minute is always 25 feet per second slow. You can try playing with the anti-bolt stick settings, the ABS in there. I really don't think it's necessary to change them from what is factory default that comes with the board. But what I would do is just bump the dwell up another 2 milliseconds to where it might clear that up. If that doesn't do it, you probably still have to relube inside. So a little refresher here. The dwell on the DX drive likes to be somewhere between 6 and 12. You're probably going to be okay with a dwell of 6 under warm conditions with good lube on it. If you end up with problems with it cycling, you can bump it up another 2 where it comes from the factory at 8, which is going to handle your widest array of playing conditions. If you start playing in cold weather, I've used this drive right here down in weather into the high teens, low 20s, and it will work, but you probably want to bump your dwell up a little more because your lube here gets a little bit thick and it tends to gel a little bit, and you need a little higher dwell in order to make the bolt move consistently the same way every time. So you can go up as high as about 12. There's really no harm in putting it any more than that. You're just losing a lot of your gas down through the frame rather than putting your paint out the barrel, so it's kind of wasted. So a little overview here. They come from the factory with the dwell set at 8. That's really fine for most playing conditions. If you want to tweak it a little bit, you can drop it down. I wouldn't get it below 6. I've actually had this marker here. This is a brand new one. It's never actually been on the field. But I've had this marker right here function on a dwell of 3. It works. It just is a little low for what you want to use out there. It's not going to be real consistent on its cycling. And there's nothing wrong with going out there on a dwell of 12. You just may not be quite as efficient, but it will work. A couple other notes on the dwell. Changing your dwell between 6, 10, 12, wherever you want to be in between, it's not going to have a real effect on the velocity that you get with the regulator setting. In other words, you chronograph at say 280 on a dwell of 6, you change it to 8, it's not going to make it shoot 300. It may move 3-5 feet per second, but it shouldn't change your velocity you're getting a whole lot. Not to say that you can change your dwell, go back out on the field without chronographing. It's never a good idea to do that, but it's not going to have a real effect on your velocity. That's just the design of the way this spool valve here works. Also, the dwell will not have a real impact on your shot-to-shot consistency. In other words, if you go out there and you're chronographing 280 plus or minus 3, which is actually pretty doable with this. A lot of it has to do with your paint quality, the way the valve works in here. You have real consistent paint, you're going to have consistent shot-to-shot variation in your chronograph speeds. If you have really poor paint or don't have a very tight bore match, I've actually seen it jump around 15-20 feet per second up to, because of the paint alone. So you put a good tight, I like to underbore a little bit, you don't have to, but just the way I play. I'll underbore a little bit, and I've actually gotten some really consistent velocity readings on it. But changing the dwell doesn't affect that, so you're going to have about the same shot-to-shot consistency with all your dwell settings as long as you got your dwell high enough to make the bolt cycle fully. So you can go ahead and tweak it if you want to. Again, you don't have to. They come set at 8, which is where they probably need to be. And what I've just gone through here works for the DX drive. This is a little older version that was in the TAC drone. But it works in the DX drive when paired with the TAC drone, as well as the new DX drone. So have fun with it.